Let me ask you a question. Have you ever worked somewhere where information felt hidden, where decisions were made behind closed doors, and no one knew what was going on? If you have, you already understand the power of transparency, because you felt the damage caused by its absence. Transparency isn't about telling everyone everything. It's about sharing information honestly, especially when it affects people's work and their future. It answers 3 key questions. What's really going on? Why are decisions being made? And how does this affect me? When leaders withhold information, employees don't stop thinking. They start guessing. This guessing game leads to rumors, mistrust, and disengagement. Silence communicates just as loudly as words, and often far more negatively. Trust is built when words and actions align. Transparency is the bridge that connects leadership's authority with employee trust. When people trust what they hear, they fully commit to what they're building together.
Hi, welcome to the show. This is a particular show that we're going to be doing relative to, hold on one second, I have a mic problem here, so not a mic, but a hearing problem I need to resolve. There we go, okay. So now, welcome. Sorry about all of that. It's, you have everything out. It went perfectly fine last night, and sure enough, get on the air this morning, and for some reason, it didn't want to take the microphone. So anyway, I think we resolved what I need to do to deal with that, and so I want to welcome you to this particular show because we're going to be talking about transparency. This is the topic the last 2 newsletters this last week were about. And confidentiality and transparency. It's something I ran into constantly, both employed with a company and also as a consultant with a company. So it's no simple problem, and it affects and impacts so many people's lives. So, and it deals with trust, and so we're really talking about the difference between remaining confidential about something and trust, and being transparent with your employees, how much you trust your employees, how much you value them, so to speak. So before we get started on that, I would like to play one other short video just to introduce you to trust. I spent a lot of years studying trust and trying to figure out how to make that work inside a culture. It was very critical to my consulting role. And so trust is something I think most people don't think about. You probably weren't taught about it in high school or college. It's something you're supposed to gain through experience in life, but I put together a short video to kind of introduce you to trust. I used to play this video for all my clients, so let's...
Part 1. Defining the foundation. Introduction to trust. We begin with a fundamental definition. Trust is the firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. That strength can be internal, believing in someone's character, or external. Imagine you've fallen over a cliff and someone grabs your wrist, saying, "I've got you." You trust them because you feel the physical strength of their grip and see their stature. Whether trust is built on internal or external factors, one fact remains undeniable. Trust is given. It cannot be demanded. It must be earned, never commanded. Do not confuse trust with power. Power can be demanded through fear, but trust is granted through desire. The thermostat of trust and fear. Think of trust as a thermostat that regulates the climate of an organization. On one side, you have trust resulting in commitment. On the other, you have fear resulting in mere obedience. Part 2. The balance of harm. The teeter-totter metaphor in childhood. You likely sat on a teeter-totter with a friend. As long as you both took turns touching the ground and pushing off, there was a cycle of trust. But if the other child kept their feet on the ground, leaving you suspended in the air, the dynamic changed. Suddenly, they had control over whether you returned to safety or were harmed. In that moment, trust evaporates. Even if they say they were just kidding, a seed of distrust is planted because the balance of power shifted toward the ability to do harm. We can apply this same thought to the scales of justice. Imagine the two trays represent two people, and the weight in each tray represents the ability to do harm. When the ability to do harm is equal, the scales are balanced. This is why parties trust one another, not necessarily out of pure altruism, but because they fear equal retaliation. In leadership, however, the scales are naturally unbalanced. By definition, a leader has more power to harm an employee professionally or emotionally than vice versa. This inherent imbalance creates an initial state of distrust. Employees will constantly check the wind to see what a leader wants, fearing punishment if they step out of line. Part 3. The 4 C's of trust building to balance these scales and move from fear to commitment. Leaders must utilize for specific components what I call the 4 C's of leadership, adapted from the work of Warren Bennis and Bert Nanus. 1. Compassion. Compassion requires a leader to be an active listener. It signals to the employee that they are valued as a human being, not just a resource. Lack of compassion makes an employee feel like a cog in the machine. Compassion can even be expressed through tough love or critique, provided the delivery is sincere and the nonverbal cues match the words. 2. Congruence. Congruence means your behavior reflects your statements. If your verbal message is positive, but your nonverbal cues, like avoiding eye contact or being unavailable, are negative, you are perceived as incongruent and unreliable. Research shows that over 70% of a message's meaning is derived from nonverbal communication. If there is a disconnect, the receiver will almost always believe the nonverbal signal over the spoken word. 3. Consistency. The more often you are congruent, the more you are seen as consistent. Consistency allows employees to predict your reactions and requirements. When a leader is predictable, the fear of harm is mitigated. If you have an employee in the air on the teeter-totter, but you always let them down when you say you will, they stop being fearful and start trusting your reliability. 4. Competence followers trust experts. Research by French and Raven suggests that leaders seen as referent, approachable, and likable, and expert are granted more influential power. Competence isn't just about technical skill, it's about communication competency. A leader who cannot communicate their expertise is often perceived as incompetent. Part 4. Conclusion: leading versus managing. You can achieve objectives without trust by using positional power or coercive power. You can force people to follow you through fear. But that isn't leadership, it's poor management. Referent and expert leaders achieve more because they move the teeter-totter into perfect balance. They recognize that if the employee fails, the leader fails. They use interpersonal communication as the vehicle to build trust. Closing takeaways: trust is earned, not commanded. It is the driver of performance that goes beyond expectations. Meaning is in the mind of the receiver. Always design your message based on how the other person will interpret it. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. Use the feedback loop to ensure your 4 C's are actually being received. Instead of managing through fear, balance the harm. Practice the 4 C's. And watch your organization move from compliance to true commitment.
There you go. So we have a pretty good understanding now of what's going on with trust. And so that's important for you to understand as we go forward in this area and talk about this, because it helps us to stay focused on the things that we need to do to build trust, because without that trust, you're not going to have any type of commitment from your employees, any type of engagement. And in fact, that's probably the single biggest problem I've found between leaders and their employees, and that is there's a lack of trust. And when I investigate that, and I normally do that through surveys and everything, I find that it comes out to be the lack of good interpersonal communication skills, because again, we're not taught how to interpersonally communicate. We're just taught how to use English and spell correctly and write correctly and use correct sentence structure. So this is part of what we want to try to do as leaders, is we've got to kind of develop this interpersonal communication skill, because we're going to get hit with a lot of things as a leader when it comes to employees that we have to resolve in that area. And employees are all different. They come in different packages and sizes and attitudes, and so you really have to try to adjust and adapt to each employee. And so that requires a pretty good knowledge, almost a mastery, if you will, of interpersonal communication. So, but let's talk about this area of transparency here, and see if I can help you understand a little more about what transparency is about. So let's go to the slideshow presentation here. Let me get myself all... You have to excuse my shaking here. I have a neurological disease that makes me shake uncontrollably, so to speak, and I don't even know when that's going to happen. The good news is I don't feel uncomfortable with it, and I don't hide it. I just tell people what to expect from it. So let's see what we can do here to get into the sort of brief discussion about this topic area, just to kind of refresh your memory about the news. Most of this was in the newsletters, but we'll just refresh your memories a little bit about this. What you have in organization is normally a battle, a fight, a conflict, if you will. Transparency versus confidentiality, and you really want to decide where is that line to be crossed. And so with transparency, it's about sharing information honestly, especially when it affects someone personally. You might think about layoffs. Okay, they're going to affect somebody pretty significantly, or some people pretty significantly. But yet most executives don't want to talk about layoffs because they're afraid employees will leave the company too early, or and they won't have the workforce to do what they need to do, which was kind of a contradiction when you think about their thought process. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Confidentiality is about guarding information that would be detrimental to the company. And so the problem arises when the leadership doesn't trust the employees with the information about the company that could impact the employee personally, and if the information leaked out, it could be detrimental to the company. So that's what leaders are faced with dealing with when it comes to transparency and confidentiality. And so companies withhold information also sometimes, though, to manipulate employees, to try to get them to go a certain way. We call that coercive leadership, or there's a combination of 4 or 5 styles that came out of a group called French and Raven. I think you heard about it in the film. And one of those styles is you have a legitimate leader, and that means that this person was hired and put in that position and entitled, and consequently with that comes certain rights for that leader to do. And one of them is to give performance appraisals, to hire and fire, those kinds of things. But if you layer that with coercion, that's how leaders tend to get employees to do something. So they use that legitimate power they have over them to create a sense of distrust and fear. And that's where you saw in the film about harm. Trust is really the regulation of harm. Harm is really the regulator of trust. It depends on whether that's balanced. You have that perfect temperature. Your body has that perfect temperature, 98.6, couple degrees above that, and you're out of whack. You're out of sync. You don't feel good. Couple of degrees below that, and things aren't right either. It's that balance right there at 98.6, or whatever temperature you like to keep your house at, where you feel comfortable, where everything is copacetic and going right. And so that's, if you think about trust that way, who can keep this balanced? And there's battles, and this is the battle we have between corporations and unions. Why unions were formed? Because corporations used to basically abuse employees sometimes. I mean, they were horrible in terms of their abuse of employees during the industrial age. And so consequently, employees had to have some way of fighting back. One way of fighting back was if they all walked off the job at one time. Think about Amazon. If all 100 and some odd thousands of employees walked off Amazon all at one time, if they synchronized each other, they synchronized it, and they all walked off at one time, it would shut Amazon down. People could pay for all they wanted to pay, but they wouldn't be getting their products. And then it wouldn't take long for Amazon to realize that they need to change something with these employees because to get them back to work, otherwise they have nobody to deliver. They couldn't hire 100,000 employees overnight. This would take Amazon from $1 billion corporation to a loss corporation overnight if employees did this. So that's not likely to happen, but it's what unions were formed to do. They were formed for a particular manufacturing plant. Where you had maybe 150, 200 employees employed. If they all walked off the job, the manufacturing plant stopped working. And so consequently, it forced the leadership back to talk with those employees about what are going to be the boundaries relative to the work and the work environment, from pay, from benefits, from behaviors and treatment, and all of those things get into the equation. So there's this balance. So it's important for you to understand that, because I'm not sure. I think leaders come to the table from a legitimate perspective. I mean, when you go into an employee and you're first hired as an employee into a company, you assume that leader has power over you that's greater than you have over them. Okay, and until they see your work is invaluable to them, and if you quit, it's going to harm them greatly, they have an unbalanced power. And leaders have to learn how to regulate that back down to a closer balance power scenario so that employees feel valued and important to the organization. That's part of a leadership's role. So that's where what we're talking about here when we talk about trust. So trust is really built when the words and the actions are aligned, okay? That if you caught that in the film, this is called congruency. It's an element of trust that's critical. it's critical for a lot of reasons. Trust is important for a lot of reasons, and this congruity is important for a lot of reasons. Not just to keep things, calm in the work environment, but also performance. The misinformation that can cause somebody to do something wrong. And that's misinterpreted because of nonverbal cues. So if we have this trust, and we were talking about psychologically safe culture, sorry, that's spelled wrong, that are built through effective two-way communication. Okay, now we talk about transparency. It's built on trust, which leads to high-performing employee retention, and an employee feels valued, and that comes from that two-way communication that you establish from the top to the bottom, all the way to the bottom, but from the bottom to the top also. Okay, it's not just the fact that employees alone have to bear all this burden for communicating. The leaders have to bear. Leaders have to bear all the burden for communicating. The employees have to do that also. So transparency prevents misinformation, mistakes, leads to higher quality productivity, and it also reduces costs. So, which is something that if we get our arms around here in America today, we might solve some significant problems. But right now, we have a more top-down communication process going on in America. And if we just took the government and we're looking at that, this is not one of these where the leadership is interested in hearing what all the people in America have to say. Well, take that down to a micro level and working in a restaurant. That if you have a boss in a restaurant that wants the employees to do great service, sell the food, while they're eating, upgrade to a dessert, those kinds of things. If the employee doesn't know about all of this stuff, if they don't have a sense of what's going on with the restaurant, they're not enthusiastic. And they're selling and adding on a dessert to the meal to increase the value to the owner of the restaurant. So these are things that are important about communication and the transparency of communication in organizations. So effective organizational communication. Okay, we're talking about throughout the whole organization, builds positive cultures which tend to lead to greater employee satisfaction and engagement. And that's sort of the dynamic and what we try to achieve when we talk about culture, trying to create a positive culture in the organization. Let's see, what could we do to make that happen? Well, we could communicate transparently with employees to the best level we can and still protect the company and engage them in participating in building this company. Get them excited about building this company. That's everything I've normally done in culture change is focused around that. So how do we go about doing that? So one of the ways we listed three ways in the emails. So if you, by the way, haven't subscribed to these emails and you happen to see this video, you want to go in to my website and just simply, there's this subscribe box right there that pops up on my website. Just go ahead and put your email in and you're in. It doesn't cost any money. You're going to get a lot of powerful information here. I think this is a powerful way. We don't have any subscribers yet, but we're working on it. I think this is a very powerful way to deliver a lot of free consulting advice to people if they will just open up and start participating. And when we do that, what we have is a lot of information coming your way, and then we discuss that information, we resolve questions and things like that relative to the information. So there's a lot going on there. So the first thing you can do is master message congruity. We call it the unspoken pledge. True transparency isn't just about what we say, it's about what your body says, what you're saying when you're talking. That's one reason why I kind of enjoy doing these. I'm not a podcaster, so I'm not polished or anything, and I'm doing all this on my own because I can't afford a producer or anything, so it's not going to be technically polished, but it's strong data. It's strong professional content. This is the content I was paid $300 to $500 an hour, 40 hours a week to go in and work with corporations to do. It's the same content I was providing these companies that helped them build a stronger, better culture, which in turn, they got better employees hired, they stayed and worked, and they were proficient and effective at their work. And we saw progress, and not just in employee relations, but in the whole corporation's effectiveness. So organizational communication and the mastery of communication enhances organizational effectiveness, which encompasses the whole health of the organization. So the problem is with mastering message congruity, you might verbally commit to, say, open doors policy, but if your body language is closed and tense and evasive when somebody comes in to talk to you, that doesn't signal an open door policy, even though your door is open. See, so you're saying, I have an open door policy, but don't ever come in here during this time. And by the way, you're bothering me today. Get the hell out of my office. That's two different signals, and they're incongruent, and that is what disrupts the problem, or causes the problem and disrupts the organization. So that's the problem. The solution is to ensure you have a harmonious alignment in what you say and how you say it through your body and your voice. Okay, so I have 2 books on this, and this is my chance to tell you, you can buy all of my books on my website, and it's a simple website, www.victorlvogel.com. You go there, you can purchase all of the books I have that I've written on this topic. I wrote these books as ebooks, so they're easily said, because you've got some things like video links or links to assessments to help you understand yourself better. There are things like that. I wrote them as ebooks, so while you were reading, you could click on that and go to it and study that part and then continue your reading. You can't do that with a paperback or a hard copy book. You can't push that book and it goes to your link on your smartphone. You normally aren't going to carry those books around in your hand, and or carry tons of books in your hands or your briefcase or whatever you're carrying, backpack or whatever, and then take them out, try to flip through the pages, etc. Where you can go on your smartphone, pull up the data, search it, and you can go straight to the topic, difficult discussion with an employee. So that's why I write these books as ebooks. They're ebooks, they're on my website, and they are a digital library you can carry with you, because this is all a lot of stuff to remember. It's really not. One of the benefits of technology is you can carry your library on your phone with you if it's written correctly, which ebooks are. Then you can simply look up and refresh your memory on something, like, I need to plan for this discussion. So in this particular area, it's a matter of trying to understand how to read nonverbal cues effectively. And that book I have on understanding the language of the body goes into great detail about how to do that, what to look for. It talks about the neuroscience of it. It talks about why we tend to believe what we see people doing when they're telling us something versus what they tell us. pretty much like I think the video said that too. So the solution is to become proficient. Now, each of those books, I have Understanding the Language of the Body. I have Navigating Conversations, the intersection of emotional intelligence and communication mastery. And then I also have a book called The Effective The Power of Effective Interpersonal Communication. And that's sort of an outline of all of the things that leaders tend to have to deal with from a communication perspective. Every one of those books has a workbook with it that has some very simple exercises on the surface, but these are the things I used to do with my clients when I was sitting next to them. We would sit down and talk about planning out how they were going to hold a meeting. I would attend the meeting with them. They would conduct the meeting. We would have a post-meeting discussion. How do you think things went? Let's refer back to what I instructed you with the book that I gave you, that I wrote. It's a textbook, so to speak. Let's refer back. Do you see this happening? Did you see this happening? And we talked through those things, and over the course of time, as they practice these skills, they were able to perfect them to the point where they become second nature. And they became much better communicators, creating much better cultures in their organization. Now, you think about this, at the top of the organization, you have 5 or 6 people that are senior leaders that are trying to, do the work that's necessary to build a company, buy companies, sell companies, decide on what products, those things. And they are trying to communicate down exactly what they want the rest of the organization to do to support them in that way. So if you had something like Amazon with 100,000 employees, think about all the leadership that you have in place that you're trying to process that down to. And then think about the idea, as I'm talking to you about organizational communication here, think about the way that goes down. And if you ever remember as a child, you lined 7 kids up in a line and you said, I'm going to whisper something in this person's ear. I want you to repeat it exactly as I told you to the next kid. When you get to the 7th kid, it's never really the same as the first kid said or what they were told. And that's a natural tendency for people to take the communication and adapt and adjust it themselves. So there are dynamics like this you have to learn through understanding language, and you pile on top of that, if I don't behave the way that I talk, then you're even further confused about that. So the idea is to break down all those barriers that can get in the way so that the message goes down consistently to the bottom. And then, as you learned in the first session where we looked at the process of communication, you have to make sure you create a feedback loop that goes all the way back up to the top, so the top receives back a signal. Yeah, that's what I told you to do. Great, we're on the right track. Or no, wait a minute, we missed it somewhere. Somewhere in that line of kids that we passed that message down. Where did that break down? Where did it break down? Was it the first person to the second person, or was it the third to the fifth? Where was that? And you go and try to find that and fix that element so that the communication is harmonious down to the bottom, and that the feedback from the bottom back up to the top is consistently the same. And so that's what we're doing here. That's the solution we're talking about here. In this case, it's incongruency. When somebody says one thing, but people are reading from their body language or how they're behaving, that doesn't ring clear. I'm confused about what they really want. And you got to learn how to overcome that. And that's what this thing here says. I just gave you the actions that you need to do to correct that. So the second thing is create the dialogue fostering bottom-up safety. Trust is a two-way street. Leaders must not only be transparent with the team, but they also must actively solicit and receive transparency from it. This requires cultivating psychological safety. So by communicating effectively, interpersonally communicating, interpersonal has to do with the psychological aspect, where the employee feels comfortable, they feel safe in their environment. They can tell you if they think you're doing something wrong and not feel like you're going to jump down their throat. This idea of creating that two-way interaction in a very transparent way. And so when you withhold information, it's not transparent. So the employee's having to, like I think in the video said very appropriately, you don't let people know, they will in fact start guessing. And they will normally go to the negative side of not guessing, because they're trying to protect themselves. They're in a protective mode. Your brain goes into your left side of your brain. You start worrying about all the things that can hurt you, as opposed to all the things that could be a benefit from what's about to happen. They don't think about that side of it, because why would you not tell us that? You would only not tell us what you don't want us to hear. So therefore, it's got to be bad. So, I mean, it makes pretty good sense when you think about it. But you got to create this bottom up. And what's interesting is we train people in communication. We train leaders in feedback and, how to communicate, and just like I'm doing now. But this isn't. The other thing I think is strong about what I'm doing here in this project is it's not just aimed at leaders. This is also aimed at employees. If you're an employee, you want to subscribe to these newsletters and learn this information, because it's going to help you communicate with your boss more effectively. Even if your boss struggles with this, you have the ability to figure out how to work around that and help that boss grasp your message. Okay? So this isn't just for leaders, and it's not even just for business. This could be true in a family situation. Your family's an organization. Your extended families are a bigger organization. Your friends are a certain organization. Your church group is a certain organization. So, and how you communicate in each of those organizations is a little different. It's a little different. So, this isn't just for leaders that I'm talking to here. So, if you think that this is stuff that leaders ought to know. No, this is stuff that everybody needs to know for their day in and day out healthy interaction with everybody else, where they can connect more effectively and build trust. So the role here is crucial pillar for future leadership alongside self-awareness. The role of emotional intelligence and mastering emotional intelligence is a crucial pillar for future leadership. Alongside self-awareness and communication mastery, AI allows you to navigate complex situations and build high-performing teams or high-performing organization, if you want to take that to the macro level. And where you don't have this, where you don't have the emotional intelligence involved, you find yourself struggling. We see that with our government right now. Then you have the conversational technique. Use effective dialogue to fully understand the other person's message, emotions, and intents. And this transforms potentially defensive interaction into a productive exchange. Otherwise, you start arguing. And if somebody starts an argument, you have the capacity to diffuse that argument and turn it into a constructive conversation. If you don't, it escalates into a more bitter argument, and bad things come out of that. So the action here is when receiving feedback or hard truths from an employee, your priority is to, and speaking from a leader perspective, your priority is to leverage nonverbal cues to enhance listening. Don't interrupt that person. Don't challenge them. Don't use your legitimate power to overpower them. This is where you pocket that and you listen and you pay attention to the employee to make them feel like you appreciate the information they're giving to you. By managing your own nonverbal cues, you create a psychologically safe environment where others feel comfortable in sharing open and honest information. That's critical if something's really going wrong. You've given instructions and it's really created a horrible situation that's going to end up being a mess for you in the end. You want to know that information before that happens. And if employees don't feel comfortable in coming and talking to you, if you haven't created that safe environment, then they're just going to let it go, and then it's going to blow up, and they're just going to say, I just did what I was told, when they could have come to you and said, hey, look, you've made a mistake here, and this is going to screw this up, and we're just trying to help you out here. What do you think we ought to do? Well, we'll fix it. Okay, all right, good, thanks. We'll go down and fix it for you. And that's putting trust and value into your employee workforce, trying to help you. That's what you're trying to achieve with transparency versus trying to hoard it. Now, if you hoard that information purposefully, then you're trying to set an employee up or employee group up to fail so that you can lord over them with your legitimate coercive power and say, I told you I'm the leader, And really, the failure came from you not sharing the information. So that's something for you to be thinking about. So the third thing you want to try to do as a leader to enhance transparency is to model vulnerability through what we call a transparency loop. The most powerful way to repair damaged trust is to model the behavior you want to see. This means embracing transparency about your own human fallibility. If you can admit your mistakes and your errors, I've been in conversations where I've got into it and I realized I was wrong and it didn't feel comfortable. And I simply just stopped the conversation and said, look, this is going the wrong area. I need to go think about this a little bit and come back. And let's come back and talk about it again. And then when I come back, I can say, I was wrong in my approach here. I need to listen and hear more what you guys have to say about this before I start saying anything. And they appreciated that. They're going, okay, sure, we understand. We do that too. So that's what we mean here by modeling vulnerability. So you need to become a holistic leader. When navigating conversations, understanding and applying emotional intelligence is key. Holistic leadership requires self-awareness of yourself and where you're coming from when you're talking, as well as where the other person is coming from. That's a holistic approach to it. You're looking at both sides simultaneously, and then you can regulate how you want that to go as a leader. If the employee feels comfortable, and that's what your primary role is, making the employee feel comfortable with your interaction, that you're doing it to help them, so to speak. The repair process, if a conversation or feedback session becomes challenging, or this is an example I just gave you, so we'll go on by that. Actionable strategy. When you meet the employee, again, be honest about pausing to avoid negatively affecting the resolution. This act of admitting you need a moment builds immense trust and strengthens the relationship, showing that you prioritize the solution over preserving the flawless facade. So this kind of brings us to our question and answer period here. So if you are out there anywhere and we're still live, so if you have some sort of comments that you have out there on YouTube, then I want to try to get to you here. Let's see what my options are here. Let's see. Well, let's see. you should, if you're out there, you should be coming across. I don't see any comments coming across right now. So, and I don't see any questions. So what will we be doing here is going to this question and answer segment here where I can see your chats from YouTube. And I'd want to look at that chat section and I would be seeing your comments up here, and then I would go ahead and bring a comment over and we would talk about it and share it and that kind of stuff. But it doesn't appear anybody's here still yet. This is a fairly new process, and we're struggling with trying to get it up and getting people to pay attention to it. So I won't hold us any longer here, make this any longer just to talk to myself or talk about things. I will tell you this. I think this is a good process for sharing information. We have, again, two emails that go out every week. Right now, we're covering the top 10 pain points for leaders, and transparency and confidentiality battles are one of those pain points that leaders have to deal with. And then so that is the content. We talk about what's going on, what the issue is there. Then the second email comes a couple days later, and that's sort of a remedy, some things you can do to correct the problem or resolve the issue or operate more effectively as a leader or an organization or as an employee. Then every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. you're going to find me here doing this again. Unless for some reason I have to move it, in which case I'll send out an email to everybody who's a subscriber. And these are basically normally done for subscribers. So if you're not a subscriber, you're not going to be in the live chat initially, and you're not going to be able to see what the live chat says initially through the recording unless you subscribe. So it's my way of trying to funnel folks in to participating in the discussion. And so you have those two emails, and then this slight overview and some more additional information I add in, like in this case here, I gave you a video on trust and what's involved with trust. Maybe give you a different viewpoint on looking at trust, and then we can actually answer questions if people had them here. Right now, there's I don't see any questions coming in, so nobody's here, so there are no questions answered. Consequently, nobody can learn and grow from experiences of other people. Now, here's what you can do. If you see this video, you don't have to attend this live session. You can send me an email with questions in it. You can put questions in my channel, my YouTube channel, Building Renaissance Leaders. There's a community there where you can just go in and ask a question there for the next session. And I will actually put that question up and put it in there. If you give me your name, I'll put your name on there. And we can show that question. I'll type it in and we can show that question. And another way to do this is to get out your phone and simply do a quick video question and send me the video, and I'll put that on air and people can listen to you. I like that because it's a nonverbal connection. It's a nonverbal connection. That's what we say we want. So those are three ways right there that you can participate in this process and then people can begin to learn from my responses to those reactions. Another way is to just email me and tell me, hey, I want to join you Saturday morning and I have a question or I have a story like the story I told. There is a story I want to tell you just before I go. I had a contract to help a department build a better culture within the department, to deal with these things that we just been talking about, the confidentiality, the trust, the confidentiality, the transparency, the leadership style, all of the things that you assess when you assess someone to help them improve their relationship between the leadership, the employees, and the culture as a whole. That worked out so well. It ended up, this organization had made a strategic decision to sell. It had a long history. The leadership at the top was not interested in continuing it. The owners were not interested in continuing it. They wanted to sell this and put it on the company and put it on the market. And this was one of those scenarios where they were going to hold back telling the employees about this sale. And when they brought me in, or what they saw happen with their HR function, which is the one I was working with, they were saying, hey, look, we kind of need this for the whole organization for this reason. And that contract was in the millions of dollars. Not for me, but for the contractor I was working with. Because I subcontract to other larger corporations for larger programs like this one. And what we ended up doing was convincing the board and the senior leadership to engage the employees and let them know that they were going to sell the company. One, that would open up the company to allow buyers to know they were on the market. Two, it allowed the employees time because it was going to take some time to get this company where it needed to be to sell at the price they wanted to sell at. It allowed the employees time to begin to make their arrangements so that they were not caught short. And then we helped them do that. We actually started filtering to other competitors of this company that they were for sale and that our employees were looking for positions, and we had some set dates and times that we could schedule with these companies, and we literally started interviewing our employees at these companies with the agreement that no one would hire them until the company sold. Well, that worked out for the company. There were a lot of employees who took severance, really good severance packages, walked out the door, had a going away party, in fact, and then literally walked into their new job the next morning, making what they were making, most of the time making what they were making before, in some cases more, in some cases a little less, but not much. And they walked into another job and banked their severance package. Now, not everybody did that. Some people eventually took early retirement, and we were able to plan and schedule that early retirement so it didn't hurt the company at phases where it didn't hurt the company. So all of that happened simply because we decided not to hide the idea where we were going to sell the company from employees for fear that all the employees would start finding new jobs. We engaged them in helping us do it. And believe it or not, these employees had a lot of loyalty to this company, and they didn't want to see it go away, but they knew it had to go away, but they wanted it to go away the right way. And so it still has that legacy of having done that. And that is an important point here. That if you have a story like that, I don't care if it's local, just between you and your leader, between a department, departments between departments. There's a lot of battles go on between departments and organizations like this, and one withholds information to get a better budget than the other. Things like that happen all the time in organizations. Somebody wants a promotion, somebody else wants a promotion too. They start withholding information from each other, and that eventually hurts everybody in the organization or the department, whatever it is. So there are a lot of stories out there that when people tell them, you can learn more about how to use these three concepts that we told you to learn about how to communicate, be congruent in your communication, to make it a two-way process, and to put some humility in it so that everybody understands that no one is perfect, and it's okay to be honest and open with each other. So therein lies what I hope will be a lesson for everyone who sees this video. Come back and look at it over and over again, and you'll pick up more and more things that your mind relates to about who you are and what you do. And please, this process, pass it on. If you don't want to do it, at least pass it on. But I encourage everybody to go ahead and sign up for the newsletter. You can always unsubscribe later if you don't want to, but it doesn't cost you anything to subscribe. A lot of this information is quality consulting information you're getting for free, okay? But you got to participate, and if you participate, it'll be even stronger. And it isn't just for leaders or executives. It's for employees also. It's for every human who wants to make another human a trusting relationship. So you don't have to be a leader to learn from these, even though they're focused on leadership. You don't have to be a leader to learn how to communicate more effectively with other people. I hope this is helpful to somebody down the road. I hope somewhere this kind of catches on, because I think it's a model where everybody, not just leaders, can get engaged and learn, and you can afford it. It's free. You can afford it. I'm trying to do this for free. I'm not trying to. The only thing that costs you money is if you want to learn more. Those textbooks are where I make any money to help me kind of keep this process going. So they are for sale on my website, www.victorlvogel.com. You go there, you can buy the book straight from that website. It'll take you to the links where you can purchase them. I take all the credit cards, all that kind of stuff through that. Again, they're ebooks. I think you're going to enjoy them. They're not long, but they're packed full of good information, and they got links to other books or surveys or videos or YouTube channels or whatever it is, where I think might be helpful for you to learn even more than what I shared in the book. Okay, so come join us. I think we would enjoy having you.